Titanic's secret dragons of the sea emerged, roaring through waves, destroying all that dared sail.
The emergency broadcast crackled across every communication channel on Earth. Ships were disappearing in the Pacific Ocean, not sinking from storms or accidents, but vanishing completely. Within 24 hours, the Galactic Maritime Council sent representatives from 12 different water worlds to investigate. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the deck of the research vessel Horizon's Eye, watching the alien shuttles descend from the sky. She was a marine biologist who had spent 15 years studying Earth's oceans. Now, she would meet species who had explored waters across the entire galaxy. The first alien to board her ship was Ambassador Vrel, a tall being from the planet Aquanus. His skin shimmered like fish scales, and he breathed through gills on his neck. Behind him came 3 more aliens, each stranger than the last. One looked like a walking octopus. Another had transparent skin, showing glowing organs inside. The third resembled a massive sea turtle standing on 2 legs. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Vrel spoke through a translation device. We have scanned your oceans. What you face is beyond anything we expected. Sarah led them to the main research lab. On the large screen, satellite images showed disturbing patterns in the ocean. Massive shapes moved beneath the waves, each one larger than any whale. Bright blue light glowed from their bodies, creating trails of bioluminescence that stretched for miles. They appeared 3 days ago, Sarah explained. We call them the Leviathan Dragons. They emerged from the deepest parts of the ocean, where our equipment never reached before. The octopus-like alien, whose name translated as Keeper Moss, examined the data. These creatures possess extraordinary power. Their sonic frequencies can create waves 40 feet high. No ship can survive their roar. Phonema. No ship. We have data's sod. No ship can survive their roar. Ambassador Vrel turned to Sarah with concern in his large eyes. Your government must evacuate all coastal areas. These dragons will destroy everything. Many species have faced similar creatures on their worlds. The only solution is abandonment or war. Sarah shook her head. We're not ready to give up our oceans. And we won't fight creatures we don't understand. The turtle-like alien, Commander Shells, made a deep rumbling sound that expressed skepticism. Humans always believe they are special. But nature has rules. Apex predators do not negotiate. Maybe they're not predators, Sarah said quietly. She pulled up another screen showing tracking data. Look at their movement patterns. They're not hunting. They're patrolling. For the next 3 days, Sarah's team monitored the dragons while the alien council observed. The creatures were magnificent and terrifying. Each dragon measured nearly 300 feet long with scales that glowed electric blue. Their roars sent vibrations through the water that could be felt hundreds of miles away. When they surfaced, their breath created mist clouds that sparkled with strange colors. But Sarah noticed something the aliens had missed. The dragons always appeared in areas where human ships had recently traveled. They circled old shipping routes and gathered near underwater construction sites. Their roars pushed vessels away but never directly attacked them. They're protecting something, Sarah told her assistant, Marcus, a young researcher who had been tracking whale migrations before the dragons appeared. Marcus pulled up a map overlay. Look at this, Dr. Chen. Every location where dragons appear corresponds with damaged coral reefs or areas of high ocean pollution. Sarah's heart raced with excitement. They're not destroying randomly. They're defending their territory. Territory we've been damaging. She presented her findings to the Galactic Maritime Council that evening. The aliens gathered in the ship's main conference room, their various forms creating a bizarre assembly. What you're suggesting is impossible, Ambassador Vrel said. These creatures operate on instinct, not reason. Then explain their patterns, Sarah countered. She displayed her data on the holographic projector. They avoid areas with clean water. They focus on polluted zones and damaged ecosystems. This is purposeful behavior. Keeper Moss leaned forward with interest. If true, this changes everything. But how do you prove it? We try to communicate, Sarah said simply. The room erupted in multiple alien languages, all expressing disbelief. Commander Shell's translation came through clearly. Communication requires shared understanding. What would you possibly say to a creature like that? That we're listening, Sarah replied. That we acknowledge their presence. That we want to understand. Ambassador Vrel studied Sarah for a long moment. In 12,000 years of galactic history, no species has successfully communicated with oceanic apex creatures. Most choose domination through force or flee to land permanently. You're proposing something entirely different. Because we're human, Sarah said with quiet confidence. We adapt. We learn. We find new solutions. The aliens debated among themselves. Finally, Ambassador Vrel spoke. We will allow you 1 week. If you cannot establish communication, the Council will recommend evacuation protocols for all human coastal settlements. That night, Sarah stood alone on the deck, watching the bioluminescent trails of dragons moving in the distance. The water glowed blue where they swam, creating paths of light across the dark ocean. Their roars echoed like ancient songs, powerful and sorrowful. Marcus joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. I think they're already talking, Sarah said. We just need to learn their language. Far below the surface, in the crushing depths where sunlight never reached, the largest dragon opened eyes that glowed like blue stars. It sensed the small vessel above, so different from the loud, harmful ships that had awakened them. This one sat quietly, listening to the ocean. Perhaps, the ancient guardian thought, these surface dwellers might finally understand. The awakening had begun, and nothing in Earth's oceans would ever be the same. Sarah's team worked through the night, preparing equipment that had never been tested for anything like this. They mounted specialized hydrophones along the hull of the Horizon's Eye, devices sensitive enough to detect a shrimp's heartbeat from a mile away. If the dragons were communicating, these instruments would hear it. Marcus calibrated the acoustic analysis software, while Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their sound engineer, adjusted frequency filters. The alien observers watched with curious expressions, though Ambassador Vrel remained doubtful. Sound-based communication is common, he said, but these creatures produce frequencies that can shatter steel. How will you separate communication from weapon discharge? Every weapon has a purpose, Sarah replied, studying the monitors. If their roars were just attacks, they'd be random. But I believe there's structure in the chaos. As dawn broke over the Pacific, the team detected movement. 3 dragons approached from the south, their bioluminescent trails creating ribbons of blue light beneath the waves. Sarah's heart pounded as she gave the order. Lower the hydrophones. Begin recording. The underwater microphones descended into the depths. Within seconds, the speakers erupted with sound so powerful that several team members covered their ears. But through the noise, Sarah heard something extraordinary. Patterns. The dragon's roars weren't random. They came in sequences, with pauses between each burst. Some roars were short and sharp, others long and melodic. The patterns repeated, like verses in a song. They're talking, Marcus whispered, staring at the waveform displays. Look at the frequency modulation. Those are deliberate variations. Dr. Tanaka's fingers flew across her keyboard. The fundamental frequency shifts between 12 and 47 Hz. That's below human hearing range, but our equipment catches it. Each dragon has a unique signature pattern, like a voice print. Keeper Moss moved closer to examine the data, his tentacle-like appendages twitching with interest. Remarkable. In 500 worlds, I have never seen such complex acoustic structures from non-technological species. Over the next 3 days, Sarah's team collected hundreds of hours of dragon vocalizations. They discovered the creatures communicated constantly, sending messages across vast distances. The ocean itself became their communication network, carrying sounds thousands of miles. The breakthrough came on the fourth morning. Dr. Tanaka identified a pattern that repeated most frequently. A specific sequence of low-frequency pulses, followed by 3 sharp clicks. This one appears in 80% of all recordings, she explained to the gathered scientists and aliens. I believe it's a basic greeting or identification marker. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Let's send it back to them. Let's send it back to them. Commander Shells objected immediately. Attempting contact could provoke aggression. You're risking your entire vessel. No. We're risking nothing by trying to understand, Sarah countered. And everything, by remaining silent. They modified their underwater speakers to replicate the dragon's frequency range. It took 6 hours to program the exact sequence. When everything was ready, Sarah stood at the control panel, her hand hovering over the transmission button. If this works, Ambassador Vrel said quietly, you'll have accomplished something no species in the Galactic Maritime Council has ever achieved. Sarah pressed the button. The speakers transmitted the pattern into the depths. Low pulses, then 3 sharp clicks. The team waited in absolute silence. Seconds turned into minutes. Sarah began to fear they had made a terrible mistake. Then, from the darkness below, a response came. A young dragon, smaller than the others at only 100 feet long, rose from the depths. Its scales glowed brighter than any they had seen, shifting between blue and green. It circled the horizon's eye slowly, curiously, without aggression. The dragon released a vocalization, soft by dragon standards but still powerful enough to vibrate the ship's hull. Dr. Tanaka's equipment analyzed it immediately. It's repeating our pattern back to us, she said, her voice filled with wonder. But with variations. Like it's asking a question. Marcus compared the waveforms. The fundamental structure is the same, but it added extra clicks at the end. Maybe asking who we are? Sarah's mind raced. They needed a response, something to show they understood this was communication. She turned to Dr. Tanaka. Can we modify the pattern? Add our own variation? Andarker. Andarnaka. Andarcation. Add our own variation. We can try. They created a new sequence, keeping the basic structure but adding gentle pulses at different intervals. Sarah imagined it as introducing themselves, showing they were different from the noisy, harmful vessels that had disturbed the dragon's home. The transmission went out. The young dragon stopped circling. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the dragon sang. It was unlike anything they had recorded before. The sound contained layers upon layers of frequency, creating harmonics that seemed impossible from a living creature. The ship's hull resonated with the vibrations, and Sarah felt the sound in her chest, in her bones. Dr. Tanaka's eyes were wide as she watched her displays. This is beyond anything in our database. The acoustic complexity rivals human symphonies. There's emotion in this sound. Esta. The young dragon circled the ship once more, then released another pattern. Their original greeting, followed by its question, then the team's response, and finally, something new. A sequence that felt like acceptance. I think, Sarah said softly, tears forming in her eyes. It just said hello. Ambassador Vrel approached the window, watching the glowing dragon swim gracefully around the vessel. Dr. Chen, I must report this to the Council. What you've done here today has never been documented in galactic history. Humans have just opened dialogue with an apex oceanic species. The other aliens crowded around the monitors, examining the acoustic data with renewed interest. Even Commander Shells seemed impressed, his massive shell-covered head nodding slowly. Over the next hours, The young dragon stayed near the ship, exchanging simple patterns with Sarah's team. Each successful exchange taught them more about the dragon's language. They were building a bridge, one sound at a time. As evening approached, the young dragon dove deep, its bioluminescence fading into the darkness. But before it disappeared completely, it released one final pattern, a sound the team would later identify as farewell, mixed with promise. Sarah stood on the deck, watching the stars emerge above the peaceful ocean. Marcus joined her, both exhausted but exhilarated. "We actually did it," he said. "We talked to a dragon." "We took the first step," Sarah corrected. "Now we need to understand what they're trying to tell us." Deep below, the young dragon returned to its elders, carrying news of the strange surface dwellers who spoke in the old language. For the first time in centuries, the ancient guardians felt something unexpected. Hope. The young dragon, whom Sarah's team had named Cascade for the way its bioluminescence flowed like falling water, returned every morning. Each visit brought new acoustic exchanges, and slowly, a vocabulary emerged. Simple concepts, at first. Approach. Retreat. Safe. Danger. But gradually, something more complex developed. Dr. Tanaka had created a translation matrix, matching dragon vocalizations with observable behaviors. After 2 weeks of daily communication, they had cataloged over 300 distinct patterns. The Galactic Maritime Council sent additional linguists from 4 different worlds to assist with the analysis. "This is unprecedented," said Scholar Finnick, a small amphibious alien whose species specialized in xenolinguistics. "Their language structure suggests high intelligence and cultural transmission. These aren't simple creatures. They possess sophisticated cognition." On the 16th day, everything changed. Cascade arrived at dawn, but unlike previous visits, the young dragon seemed agitated. Its bioluminescence pulsed erratically, and its vocalizations came rapid-fire, overlapping and urgent. Sarah rushed to the monitoring station. "What's it saying?" Dr. Tanaka's face went pale as she analyzed the patterns. "I'm getting repeated sequences we've identified as warnings, mixed with something new. Complex historical references. I think it's trying to tell us something important." Cascade circled the ship 3 times, then dove straight down, disappearing into the depths. Moments later, it returned. And this time, it wasn't alone. 3 massive adult dragons surfaced around the horizon's eye. Each one dwarfed Cascade, their scales darker, their eyes ancient and knowing. The largest dragon, nearly 400 feet long, positioned itself directly beside the ship. Its presence made the vessel seem like a toy. Ambassador Vrel gripped the railing. "Dr. Chen, we should retreat. These are the Elder Guardians." "No," Sarah said firmly. "Cascade brought them here. This is intentional. They want to communicate." The largest dragon opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth each the size of a person. But instead of aggression, it released a vocalization so complex and layered that every speaker on the ship crackled with static. The sound lasted nearly 2 minutes, an acoustic narrative that carried weight and history. Dr. Tanaka worked frantically, breaking down the frequencies. Scholar Finnick assisted, his 3-fingered hands flying across a specialized translation device. Together, they began piecing together meaning from the dragon's song. "It's a story," Scholar Finnick said with amazement. "An origin story. They're telling us where they came from." Over the next hour, through patient exchanges and careful interpretation, the truth emerged. The dragons were not native to Earth in the way humans understood. Millions of years ago, an ancient civilization called the Architects had traveled across the galaxy, placing guardian species on planets with developing biospheres. The dragons were living tools, biological systems designed to maintain oceanic balance. Their purpose was clear: monitor water quality, regulate deep-sea ecosystems, and protect the planet's most vital resource. They were meant to remain dormant, awakening only when planetary systems reached critical imbalance. "They've been sleeping for eons," Sarah translated as the Elder Dragon continued its acoustic history. "Waiting beneath the ocean floor in geological pockets we never detected. Human industrial activity finally triggered their awakening protocols." Marcus pulled up pollution data on his tablet. "The last 50 years show exponential increases in ocean contamination. Plastic, chemical runoff, oil spills, acidification. We crossed some kind of threshold." The Elder Dragon released another sequence, this one heavy with what Sarah could only interpret as sorrow. The architects who had placed them here were long extinct. The dragons had awakened to fulfill their ancient programming, but they found themselves in a world far more complicated than their creators had anticipated. "They weren't trying to harm us," Sarah said, understanding dawning. "Their roars, the waves they create. They were trying to push our ships away from damaged areas. They were protecting both the ocean and us from contamination zones." Commander Shells approached, his expression serious. "If these creatures were designed to maintain balance, and human activity disrupted that balance, traditional galactic protocol says humans must vacate the oceans entirely." "No," Sarah said sharply. "There has to be another way." She turned back to the Elder Dragons, whose massive forms floated peacefully beside the ship. Cascades swam between the adults and the vessel, acting as a bridge. Sarah made a decision. She instructed Dr. Tanaka to prepare a complex transmission, one that would take all their learned vocabulary to construct. It took 30 minutes to program, with Scholar Finnick checking every frequency for accuracy. The message was simple but profound, an acknowledgement of past harm, an expression of understanding regarding the dragon's purpose, and a proposal for cooperation. Sarah suggested that humans could help the dragons fulfill their guardian duties by changing their behavior, cleaning the oceans, and working together rather than in conflict. The transmission played out across the underwater speakers. The three Elder Dragons remained motionless, processing. The silence stretched so long that Sarah feared she had made a terrible mistake. Then, simultaneously, all three adult dragons sang. The sound was beautiful and terrible, powerful and gentle. It contained harmonics that made the ocean itself seem to hum. The vocalization lasted 5 minutes, and when it ended, Scholar Finnick was trembling. "What did they say?" Ambassador Vrel asked. Scholar Finnick's translation device flickered with data. "They said yes. They accept the proposal for partnership. But they also issued a warning. Humanity has 10 years to demonstrate genuine change. If ocean conditions continue deteriorating, the dragons will have no choice but to fulfill their original programming and make the oceans uninhabitable for surface vessels." Sarah felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. 10 years to change humanity's relationship with the ocean. It seemed impossible. But as she watched Cascade swim happily between the Elder Dragons and her ship, creating bridges between ancient guardians and modern humans, she felt something unexpected. Determination. "Then we have work to do," Sarah said. "Marcus, contact every environmental organization on Earth. Ambassador Vrel, we'll need the Galactic Maritime Council's support. We're going to show these guardians what humans do best. We adapt, we learn, and we fix our mistakes." The Elder Dragons dove back into the depths, their mission delivered. But Cascade remained, its young eyes watching the humans with something that looked remarkably like hope. The partnership had begun, and the real challenge lay ahead. 6 months after the first contact, Earth's coastlines looked completely different. What began as a small research project had transformed into the largest global initiative in human history. Sarah stood at the United Nations headquarters in New York, presenting progress reports to representatives from every nation and dozens of alien species. "The Global Ocean Restoration Initiative has achieved remarkable results," she explained. displaying holographic maps that showed cleaning zones across all 5 oceans. We've removed over 40 million tons of plastic debris. Chemical runoff has decreased by 30%. Coral reef restoration projects are active in 73 locations worldwide. Closely. Ambassador Vrel nodded approvingly from the front row. The Galactic Maritime Council is impressed by human mobilization speed. Most species take decades to implement such changes. You have accomplished this in months. But the real work happened at sea level, where thousands of vessels now worked in harmony with the dragons. Cascade had become humanity's primary liaison, teaching researchers about underwater ecosystem needs while learning about human technology and society. Captain Maria Santos commanded one of the new Guardian Fleet vessels, specially designed ships that operated according to Dragon-approved protocols. Her ship, the Ocean's Promise, patrolled the Pacific, coordinating cleanup operations. Cascade just signaled a pollution concentration 30 miles northeast, her communications officer reported. Sending coordinates now. End. Maria adjusted their course. Within an hour, they reached the location where Cascade circled a large area of ocean. The young dragon's bioluminescence pulsed in a pattern the team had learned meant urgent attention needed. The crew deployed specialized drones that dove beneath the surface. The underwater cameras revealed an old shipping container that had ruptured, leaking industrial chemicals. The toxic plume spread slowly through the water, threatening a nearby kelp forest. Deploy the neutralization pods, Maria ordered. Her team launched biodegradable capsules, containing specially engineered bacteria that could break down the chemicals harmlessly. The technology had been developed by combining human innovation with principles the dragons had taught them about natural ocean purification systems. Cascade watched the process carefully, occasionally releasing low-frequency vocalizations that the ship's translation system interpreted as approval and guidance. When the chemical readings returned to safe levels, the young dragon performed a graceful loop. A behavior they had learned meant satisfaction. Good work, Cascade, Maria said, into the communication system, knowing the dragon could hear her voice underwater. Another section cleaned. Maria, another section, cleaned. Around the world, similar scenes played out daily. The dragons had become active partners in ocean restoration. They guided human vessels to problem areas that technology alone couldn't detect. Their ancient knowledge of ocean currents and ecosystem connections proved invaluable. In the Mediterranean, Elder Dragon Tempest worked with Italian and Greek environmental teams to restore ancient underwater habitats. In the Indian Ocean, a dragon named Monsoon helped researchers understand seasonal migration patterns that humans had been disrupting for decades. But the partnership went beyond just cleanup. The dragons possessed knowledge that revolutionized human technology. Dr. Tanaka's research team discovered that dragon bioluminescence operated on principles completely unknown to human science. By studying their cellular structures, scientists developed new sustainable energy sources that mimicked the dragon's natural light production. These bioluminescent generators required no fuel and produced no waste. Marcus led another research division studying dragon sonic communication. The principles they learned resulted in breakthrough water purification systems that used targeted sound frequencies to separate pollutants from seawater. Desalination plants using this technology could now provide fresh water to coastal communities with minimal energy consumption. The dragons are teaching us, Marcus explained during a video conference with the Galactic Maritime Council. Every interaction reveals new possibilities. They've lived in Earth's oceans for millions of years. Their biological adaptations solve problems we've struggled with for centuries. The alien observers found humanity's approach fascinating. Commander Shells admitted that his own species had encountered similar guardian creatures on their homeworld, but had chosen to simply avoid the oceans rather than attempt cooperation. We thought ourselves too advanced to learn from primitive creatures, he confessed during a council meeting. We abandoned 70% of our planet's surface. Watching humans work with the dragons shows us the opportunity we wasted. Keeper Moss proposed that other species revisit their own abandoned ocean worlds. If humans can establish such partnerships, perhaps we too can reconnect with guardians we left behind. Not everything proceeded smoothly. Some shipping corporations resisted the new regulations. Several nations initially refused to implement the required environmental standards. But as results became visible, opposition faded. Tourist boats began offering dragon observation tours, but only under strict guidelines that Cascade and the Elder Dragons approved. These tours generated significant revenue for coastal communities while educating millions about ocean conservation. Children around the world learned about the dragons in school. Videos of Cascade swimming alongside research vessels became viral content. The young dragon had become Earth's most famous celebrity, a symbol of the new relationship between humanity and the ocean. Sarah received reports that the dragon population was growing. 3 new juveniles had emerged from deep-sea chambers, indicating the guardians felt conditions were improving enough to expand their numbers. Each young dragon was paired with a research team to continue building the partnership. One evening, Sarah sat on the deck of the Horizon's Eye, now permanently stationed as a coordination hub for the Guardian fleet. Cascade surfaced nearby, its bioluminescence creating a soft blue glow across the water. "We're making progress," Sarah said aloud, knowing the dragon could hear. "The ocean is healing." Cascade responded with a gentle vocalization, a sound Dr. Tanaka's translation matrix identified as contentment mixed with encouragement. The young dragon had learned to understand many human words, just as humans had learned the language of dragons. Ambassador Vrel approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I have news from the Galactic Maritime Council. They have officially designated Earth's Guardian Partnership as a Class A diplomatic achievement. 4 other species have requested human advisors to help them reconnect with their own ocean guardians." Sarah smiled, watching Cascade dive and resurface playfully. "A year ago, we thought these dragons would destroy our civilization. Now they're teaching us how to save it. Humanity's greatest strength," Ambassador Vrel said thoughtfully, "is not your technology or your numbers. It is your willingness to listen, to adapt, to find common ground, even with beings completely unlike yourselves." Far below, the Elder Dragons sensed the changes happening across Earth's oceans. Chemical levels dropping, plastic islands shrinking, coral reefs regenerating. The surface dwellers were keeping their promise. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient guardians felt something their programming had never anticipated. Partnership. And it felt like hope. 2 years after the awakening, Sarah stood on a newly constructed floating platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The Global Ocean Restoration Summit gathered representatives from every nation on Earth and 43 alien species from across the galaxy. But the most important attendees swam in the waters below. 12 Leviathan dragons circled the platform, their bioluminescence creating patterns of blue and green light that reflected off the waves. Cascade, now noticeably larger and more confident, led the younger dragons in a welcoming display. The elder dragons maintained respectful distance, observing with their ancient, knowing eyes. "In 24 months, we have transformed humanity's relationship with our oceans," Sarah announced to the assembled crowd. "Ocean pollution levels have decreased by 62%. We have restored over 15,000 square miles of damaged ecosystems. Most importantly, we have learned that guardianship is not about domination, but partnership." The platform's underwater speakers transmitted her words into the depths. The dragons responded with a harmonic vocalization that Dr. Tanaka's system translated as agreement and appreciation. Captain Maria Santos presented the Guardian Fleet's achievements. The fleet had grown to include 500 vessels from 70 nations, all operating under protocols developed in cooperation with the dragons. Not a single ship following these guidelines had encountered problems with the Guardians. "The dragons guide us to areas needing attention," Maria explained. "Last month, Cascade led us to an underwater volcanic vent that was releasing unusual chemical compounds. Without the dragons' knowledge, we would never have detected it. We were able to monitor it and protect nearby ecosystems before any damage occurred. Marcus took the stage next, showcasing technological breakthroughs inspired by dragon biology. Holograms displayed the bioluminescent power generators, now providing energy to coastal cities. Water purification systems using dragon-inspired sonic frequencies operated in 200 locations worldwide. Deep-sea exploration equipment based on dragon sensory organs allowed humans to study ocean depths previously unreachable. Every day, the dragons teach us something new, Marcus said. They show us that millions of years of evolution have solved problems we thought required advanced technology. Sometimes, nature's solutions are the most elegant, but the most remarkable presentation came from an unexpected source. Young Lila Zhang, a 12-year-old student from Shanghai, approached the podium nervously. She had won an international competition for her research project. I studied whale migration patterns before and after the dragons awakened, Lila explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. The whales are healthier now. They follow the dragons to feeding grounds we didn't know existed. The dragons are helping all ocean life, not just humans. Cascades surfaced near the platform, as if listening to Lila's presentation. The young dragon released a soft vocalization that made the audience smile. Doctor. Tanaka's translation read, "The small one speaks truth." Lila beamed with pride. My grandmother says the dragons returned because the ocean called for help. I think she's right. And I think they stayed because we finally learned to listen. The Galactic Maritime Council representatives presented their findings next. Ambassador Vrel stood before the gathering, his scaled skin reflecting the sunlight. The Council has studied Earth's Guardian Partnership extensively, he announced. We have concluded that humanity has achieved something unique in galactic history. You did not conquer the Guardians. You did not flee from them. You created a third option: cooperation. He gestured toward the water where the dragons swam peacefully. Based on Earth's success, 7 species have now re-established contact with guardian creatures on their homeworlds. 3 more are planning expeditions to oceans they abandoned centuries ago. Humanity has become a teacher to the galaxy. Commander Shells stepped forward, his massive form imposing yet gentle. I must confess my initial skepticism. I believed humans would fail, as my species failed when we faced similar guardians. I was wrong. You have shown us that coexistence requires humility, patience, and genuine respect for life, different from our own. As the presentations concluded, Sarah activated the platform's central display. It showed a real-time map of Earth's oceans, color-coded to represent ecological health. Blue indicated thriving ecosystems. Yellow showed areas still needing work. Red marked critical zones requiring immediate attention. 2 years ago, the map had been mostly yellow and red. Now, over 70% showed healthy blue. The transformation was undeniable. We still have work ahead, Sarah said honestly. 10 years was the timeline the dragons gave us. We've used 2 years well, but we cannot become complacent. Every day requires continued effort, continued partnership, continued respect. The elder dragons surfaced together, a rare sight that brought gasps from the crowd. The largest guardian, whom humans now called Ancient, released a vocalization that lasted 3 full minutes. The sound contained layers of meaning that Dr. Tanaka's systems struggled to fully translate. But the essence came through clearly. The dragons were pleased. The oceans were healing. The partnership would continue. And most remarkably, the dragons now considered humanity not as surface dwellers to be tolerated, but as fellow guardians of Earth's waters. That evening, as the summit concluded, Sarah sat on the platform's edge, with her feet dangling above the water. Cascades surfaced beside her, the young dragon's eyes reflecting starlight. Thank you, Sarah said simply, reaching out to touch the water near Cascade's glowing scales. For giving us a chance, for teaching us, for believing. We could change. Cascade responded with a vocalization that Dr. Tanaka had identified as affection mixed with trust. The young dragon dove and resurfaced, creating small waves that splashed Sarah's feet playfully. Marcus joined her, followed by Dr. Tanaka, Captain Maria, and young Lila, who had been invited to stay as a junior research assistant. Together, they watched the dragons create patterns of light in the darkening water. My daughter asks me every day when she can meet the dragons, Maria said softly. She wants to be a marine biologist when she grows up. Because of them. An entire generation is growing up knowing we share this planet with ancient guardians, Dr. Tanaka added. They'll protect the oceans better than we ever did, because they understand partnership from the beginning. Ambassador Vrel approached the group, his expression thoughtful. Do you know what makes this achievement truly remarkable? Not the technology you've developed, not the cleanup you've accomplished. It's that you changed yourselves. You looked at a crisis, and instead of reacting with fear or violence, you chose understanding. That is what the galaxy will remember about humanity. The dragons began their evening song, a nightly ritual they had developed. Their vocalizations created harmonics that resonated across the ocean, carrying for hundreds of miles. Scientists had discovered that this song helped coordinate ocean ecosystem health, a natural symphony that kept the waters balanced. But tonight, something new happened. The dragon's song included patterns they had learned from humans, musical notes, rhythm structures, even melodies from different cultures. The ancient guardians were incorporating human creativity into their ancient language, creating something entirely new. A true fusion of two species, two ways of understanding the world. Sarah closed her eyes, listening to the symphony of the deep. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, from fear and misunderstanding to partnership and hope. The road ahead would have challenges, but for the first time in human history, they were walking that road with guides who had protected Earth's waters for millions of years. Cascade surfaced one more time, releasing a pattern. Dr. Tanaka's system translated as, together, always, guardians. Sarah smiled, her heart full. Yes, she whispered to the glowing dragon. Together, always, guardians. The stars emerged above as the dragon's song filled the night. A promise echoing across the waves that resonated throughout the galaxy. Understanding triumphs over conquest. Partnership prevails over conflict. And listening can change the world.